During the grand Asvamedha Yaga ceremony, a peculiar weasel suddenly appeared in the pavilion. It moved around excitedly, rolling in the sacred water on the ground, creating quite a commotion. What made it even more unusual was that the weasel had a golden head and half of its body was covered in gold. Seeing this, Nakula quickly rushed to catch it, but to his surprise, the weasel spoke in a human voice. Laughing loudly, "Stop. You don't need to catch me. I didn't come here to run away." Nakula was shocked, not just by the weasel's laughter, but also by its ability to speak. Puzzled, he asked, "Who are you?" The weasel, instead of answering, posed its own question. "Who are you?" Nakula replied, "Don't you know? I am Nakula." The weasel retorted, "And don't you know? I am also Nakula." At this, everyone around burst into laughter, as the name Nakula also means weasel in Sanskrit. Even the weasel joined in, laughing mockingly. Embarrassed, Nakula exclaimed, "Clearly, you are no ordinary weasel. This is a sacred event, the greatest of sacrifices. Your mocking laughter dishonors the solemnity of this holy ceremony, which has been praised by the wise as the grandest in history. You must be some kind of evil spirit, taking on this strange form to ridicule something so magnificent." The weasel responded calmly, "I am not an evil spirit. I've come to test the greatness of this sacrifice, just as I have tested many before, those of 6 emperors and 16 great kings throughout history. None of their sacrifices met my expectations. You see, during the first sacrifice I witnessed, my head and half my body turned into gold. Since then, I've been searching for a sacrifice so grand that it would turn the rest of me into gold. My intentions are not evil. I simply seek to find the ultimate sacrifice." Nakula, intrigued, said, "Then why don't you roll on this holy ground and in these sacred waters? Surely this great sacrifice will transform your entire body into gold." The weasel did as Nakula suggested and rolled on the sacred ground, but nothing happened. It remained half golden. The weasel sighed and said, "Great prince, I am sorry to say, but your noble brother's Asvamedha Yaga does not meet the standard of the ultimate sacrifice I have been seeking. While I respect the effort and intent behind this grand event," the weasel looked at Dharmaputra and said, "all the grandeur and spectacle of your Asvamedha Yaga doesn't make it a true sacrifice in the deepest sense of the word. Don't misunderstand me. This isn't out of jealousy. My words come from a spiritual insight I gained through the humble sacrifice of a poor Brahmin family. That sacrifice, I know, was spiritually far greater than this one." Curious, Dharmaputra folded his hands and humbly asked the weasel to share the story of the poor Brahmin family. The weasel then began to narrate, "Long ago, before the Great War, there lived a poor Brahmin named Saktaprastha in Kurukshetra. He lived with his wife, son, and daughter-in-law. They had taken a vow known as Anshavriti, which came with strict rules and discipline. 1. They would survive by gathering leftover grains from the fields. 2. They ate only to sustain themselves, not for pleasure. 3. They limited themselves to 1 meal a day, eaten only in the afternoon. 4. They owned no personal property. 5. They never saved any food for the next day. 6. They refused to beg, borrow, or steal and would never rely on others for their survival. For many days, the family lived by these strict principles. At times, when they couldn't find enough grain, they went without food, drinking only water to survive. Eventually, a famine spread across the land, and the fields became barren due to drought. There was hardly any grain to collect. The family resorted to gathering small amounts of maize, grinding it into flour, boiling it in water, and drinking the meager meal. One afternoon, just as they were about to consume their simple flour drink after offering prayers to the gods, an unexpected guest arrived. The family warmly welcomed the guest, who was a learned Brahmin, and offered him the usual hospitality. Saktaprastha greeted him, saying, "An uninvited guest is truly like the presence of God Vishnu himself. We are blessed that you have chosen to visit us today." Saktaprastha warmly welcomed the guest, saying, "Today, we are blessed to have you as our guest." However, the guest replied, "In these hard times of drought and famine, a guest may feel more like a messenger of death than a blessing." Saktaprastha, still gracious, responded, "Please, we welcome you sincerely. If a heartfelt welcome is the finest dish we can offer, then let that be your feast. Otherwise, we have only this humble flour paste." With that, he offered his portion of food to the guest. The guest ate the small meal but still appeared unsatisfied. Saktaprastha felt powerless to offer more. His wife then spoke up, saying, "Please give my portion to the guest. As your partner in life, it's my duty to support you in all things. We are bound together, whether we flourish or suffer." Saktaprastha, troubled, replied, "If I take your share, I would be worse than even animals and birds, who show more care for their mates than I would be showing for you. It weighs heavily on my heart.